This video is brought to you by the Public Domain Shop. More on them later in the video. Okay, bold statement out the gate, but I think remakes are actually pretty good. In terms of the grand history of film, cinema, television as well, there's obviously been a lot of stuff to consume, to the point that, again, Hollywood, in its general sense, but also, British cinema, Australian cinema, Asian cinema, has recycled its own material. And sometimes it's there's a great Asian or non-English speaking film, I should say, that is then taken by the Americans and then remade into maybe a lackluster comparison or maybe a really good comparison. Take The Ring by Gore Verbinski. That film fucking slaps. But so does Ringu. But I prefer the American one. How crazy is that? But at the same time, sometimes a remake, and this is kind of what I'm thinking of when it comes to remakes, they can give you silver linings, where something like, I got an email recently from the ABC saying, watch The Piano, now streaming. I'm thinking, okay, and I think it's a TV show. I'm pretty sure I'd seen some adverts for it originally, that they were readapting The Piano, which is the Jane Campion film, which I haven't fucking seen, into a mini-series of some kind. I just wanted to quickly jump in and actually say that The Piano, the 2023 version, is a reality TV show about people playing a piano, and I was just getting adverts for a new season that was coming out. It's not an adaptation or a remake of the Jane Campion film. Nevertheless, the arguments that I say in this video still stand. Just ignore the fact that the piano and the piano are two different things. Have fun. And look, they did this with Picnic at Hanging Rock. I know I was in it, but does that mean it was good? Well, that was debatable. It wasn't that good. But I don't know about The Piano yet, because I also haven't seen the original. But the thing is, with something like this coming out, it can give audiences the incentive to look into it. Or maybe they watch it, they don't like it, they complain about it online, and then they find out, actually, there's another version that exists, because this is a remake. You can go watch the original, which is critically acclaimed, or whatever. And I think that that's an interesting avenue where a property can be remade, whether it's good or bad, and it also can give people incentive to watch the original. I love Luca Guadagnino's Suspiria, and I had seen the original Suspiria from 1977, Dario Argento's film, but at the same time, I love both of them. They both give you completely different experiences with a similar enough kind of thing. It's mostly the setting that remains the same. The characters are vastly different. The whole vibe is completely different, from the visual aesthetic to the score. So much about them is so vastly different, and that's what I love about it. People were angry that Suspiria has been remade, but then you get something that's so vastly different to the original, where it is its own powerhouse on top of it. And if you don't like the style of it, you don't like the narrative, you don't like the characters, you prefer the original, then go for it. But if you don't like the kind of cheesy, giallo-ish, Italian nature of the original, you might like the remake. So you've got different avenues to explore. Now, if they're doing a Psycho thing, where it's Psycho and Psycho, then just watch the Hitchcock one. I've watched the remake, it's bad. The sequels for Psycho are good, but the remake was bad, because it's, again, the shot-for-shot with no extra touch. I like Psycho as much as the next person. I don't love it. I like the first 40-odd minutes when Marion Crane's there, but after she gets knocked off, it's just kind of starting from scratch, and it's not as interesting. Now, Anthony Perkins' performance is still phenomenal, but at the same time, I don't care as much as the film in the second half. And when I watched the remake, I'm thinking, okay, I know this is a shot-for-shot remake, but tell me that there's something different. Nothing. It's in colour, and it's a different cast, and a different director. They don't even change the narrative. They're not oh, Marion Crane actually survived, she's a zombie now. None of it. None of that happens. So I'm okay. And then, oh, wait, no, this is a different part of the video. We're doing a sponsored segment. That's a first. Wow. Today's video is sponsored by the Public Domain Shop. This has never really happened before, except for that one time where it did. But hey, I'm not a sellout, because this ain't some kind of VPN bullshit. No, it's clothing instead. It's the Public Domain Shop. They're offering 10% off for any purchase of clothing on the web store. They are a store that they're bringing back the classic copyright-free art back to life through clothing. And I like clothing. I think most people do. And I like art. I think most people do. And I like movies and literature, which, lo and behold, is some of it's in the public domain, so they utilize that for their artwork. There'll be images on screen of just how minimalistic but nicely stylized their clothing is. Isn't that great? So again, it's creations is the code word to use. It's like one of those secret codes you get in the video game, so you can surpass a couple of levels or like get a special item or something. It's pretty rad. But in this case, it's 10% off anything clothing wise. So yeah, so thanks for the public domain shop for reaching out, and I hope they don't mind the fact that I'm bad at reading off of scripts. And yeah, public domain shop, link down below. Now let's get back to the video where I talk about whatever I was talking about. But that's the thing where, like, some remakes can be really interesting, where I've seen people make the arguments of Hollywood should stop remaking good films and should be remaking bad films. Films that had a good idea but poor execution, too low of a budget, too bad of a director, awful actors, I don't know, whatever it might be, and give it something newer and fresher. And that's an interesting idea. It's an interesting idea in general, like the idea of taking what is, universally considered a bad film that has a good idea or something behind it, and rework it into something better. And yeah, that's possible. You could do that. Most of the time when people think about remakes, they think, oh, remakes are just bad versions of the originals. Take The Wicker Man. Take The Thing, which The Thing already was a remake to begin with, technically. See, that's also where you can get into a pickle, because The Thing, the 82 version, of course, John Carpenter's iconic masterpiece, is a remake of The Thing from Another World, but it's equally a adaptation of the book. So you pin it whichever way you will, but knowing Carpenter, it's a fucking remake of the original movie. But it's also an adaptation of the book. Like, I feel like, first and foremost, it's a remake because he loved the original film. I don't know if he's fucking read the book. He probably did. Does it matter? It's the same basic idea, except it isn't, because the original film has a plant person and people don't just mutate, and also there's not multiple people that are creatures. It's just the one guy. It's just the one guy. But I think that we shouldn't completely discredit remakes from existing, because again, the remake of Salem's Lot was what convinced me to watch the first one, like the Tobe Hooper film, TV movie, miniseries, whatever the fuck you even call it. It's a long fucking movie. It's 3 hours. And the thing is, as much as I could easily make the argument of, and to be fair, I didn't actually watch the remake of Salem's Lot, but I could make the argument of, I was planning to watch Salem's Lot anyway. I was gonna watch it someday, whenever it was gonna happen. And yeah, that much is true. I'd had the Blu-ray for a couple of years before I finally watched it. But at the same time, the same fucking week, the remake was coming out. I'm like, fuck, look, people are going to be talking about this because I got friends who really want to watch it, and they're going to be talking about it, and they're going to talk about elements of it in contrast to the original, and I want to know what the original's like before watching the remake, even though I'm probably not going to fucking watch the remake anyway, but I don't want people to be talking about the remake in contrast and then be spoiled on what the original had to offer. In case there's some iconic moments or some great scares or something really distinct about it that I wanted to experience firsthand without a second or third hand kind of experience being told to me. So that's why I went ahead and watched that, and I got this whole beautiful experience from it, because I also had the perfect day of no one home, let's watch a 3-hour long horror movie, and it was great, Sure, its first hour and a half is just a lot of character building and just stuff happening, very day-to-day stuff, little bits of evil in between, some creepy kids at night time, a lot of fog, great kind of stuff. But then that last hour, fucking bats it out the goddamn park. Really feels like a Tobe Hooper film by that last, hour to 45 minutes, because it's just like, hey, we're going to go to this one creepy house, and it's going to be like Texas Chainsaw, but with vampires. And to be fair, fucking slaps. So, can't go wrong. Obviously, you're going to get to a lot of different degrees where, I know that people weren't a huge fan of Lee Whannell's Wolfman adaptation that I haven't seen, couldn't get around to watching it in cinemas, I was busy. that's the kind of thing where you'd expect that someone like him would be able to craft a well thought out, well choreographed, remake, given that he did a previous remake of another Universal monster movie, The Invisible Man, which was, a fucking classic. Was that 2020? Holy shit. His 2020 Invisible Man film was amazing. And I can't believe I've actually watched it 3 times now, but I don't think I can watch it anymore after those 3 times. Also, I should probably give it a long period of time because between my second watch and third watch, I dealt with a traumatic experience that related too much to the film, so it meant that I couldn't watch it anymore because it gave me panic attacks. Isn't that fantastic? But that's a different thing. The point being is that everyone entrusted that, yeah, Lee Winnell, great Australian writer, great Australian director, made the Saw movies, can do this because, he'd pulled off Upgrade, he pulled off Invisible Man, he can pull off a Wolfman film. And apparently he can't. And everyone agreed, nope, this sucks, try again. Which also is interesting. I really gotta watch it, but apparently it's just not, most of my friends have said, watch it for free. Don't buy it, and it's expensive on 4K, let's put it that way. But even the latest Nosferatu film, Bounce on It one, that was really interesting. I watched that at the start of the year, and that was an interesting remake because the thing is, again, remake and adaptation because all its own history of the original Nosferatu from the 20s is an adaptation of Dracula, illegally done, should have not existed after they burned all the copies bar one, but that's okay. It exists and we can watch it and fucking cinema slaps. And the original Nosferatu, I love. I think it's fantastic. Sure, silent German cinema has a dated quality because of that, despite the fact that that's literally an art form all of its own, much like an animated film becoming live action. How's that How to Train Your Dragon film going, by the way? I hope it fucking fails. Same as Lilo and Stitch. Anyway, but then you cut to the 70s version, the Herzog version. In sound, in color. The original one was tone colors, so it wasn't not in color, but it was not black and white. It was toned. Either way, this one's the full-fledged 2.5 hour long, romantic period piece vampire drama. Klaus, what's his name? Isabella Adjani, fucking good cast, And to be fair, that's my favorite of the 3 adaptations. The Eggers version is still really good. I really enjoyed it. It has a great quality of both of those original 2 films mixed with Eggers' style and a bit more extra narrative flair and a fuck ton more horniness. So, reasonable outtake. And it's just one of those things where it's you got 3 different versions of the same film and all 3 of them give something new and fresh to it. This remake of Nosferatu enriches the cultural zeitgeist especially because it's a more Western American made film. I'm pretty sure it's very British though, because a lot of the cast are very British. In fact, mostly because the original 2 were German films. Even though you can watch the first film's a silent film, so you can watch it in English anyway. And of course, the Herzog version was filmed in both German and English, or at least dubbed in both, so you can watch it in either language. I'm pretty sure I watched it in English, but still, they're accessible to several audiences. But at the same time, you look at Robert Eggers' film, and that's purely outside of the actual parts where they speak in a different language, which has subtitles. It's made for a modern English-speaking audience. And at the same time, it also allows for audiences to discover the older versions because, I've got a mate who doesn't like Eggers' style, so he didn't watch the new one, but instead he went and revisited the old one. He'd already seen one of them, and he decided, I'm going to watch one of the other ones instead, because you got 3 to choose from now for Nosferatu. And plus, of course, the Dracula films, which are also fucking different. But it's interesting in its own right that, it can encourage that kind of discussion and just a willingness from the audience to explore further, I even watched a couple of videos doing comparisons between the 3, even though I'd fucking seen them all. Just because I really like that particular, YouTuber who does those video essays, but also it was just a really nice experience to kind of get like more of a, oh, how do I say this? Each perspective on the films were also an update based on his like ideologies of the time period. You know, where the first one had like the vampire be like vaguely anti-Semitic in its, you know, presentation and everything, because that was the time period of Germany at the time. But then you get to the 70s version, and Herzog has a completely different take on it, and a different representation, and you can have different interpretations from that as well, and so forth and so on with the new one. Each one can reflect their own time period that they're made in and gives you a completely different experience per that thing. You can read it as what the film is telling you, surface level, but you can read further into it based on its own its own history and from the time period that it was made. And that's the thing with a lot of remakes too, is that as much as you could complain that, you know, the 2011 The Thing exists, or that there's a new The Piano, sure, you can complain that they exist, but they also represent a period of time and gives you a good history into just cinema as a whole, you know? I think it's really interesting to see if a remake can tackle an original property, whether the original property is a so-called masterpiece or not, critically beloved, audience loved, fans love, whatever, and then the remake can give you a different style and a different feel to it. And again, most people still complain that remakes are bad and that Hollywood's out of ideas, but they've been stealing from themselves for so fucking long. It's that whole serpent eating itself thing. That one, I don't know what the fuck it's called, something in Latin, but something, no, I'm thinking of Aurora Borealis. God damn it, Skinner. Anyway, nevertheless, that shit eats itself alive and shits it back out, and guess who eats it? We do. Constantly. Marvel's been making the same fucking movie for 15 goddamn years, and nobody seems to be complaining about it. So, you know, nevertheless, there are different aspects to the remakes that culturally are hugely disagreed upon. You know, whether it's something like The Thing having the CGI instead of practical effects, despite, of course, it having practical effects and then them using CGI because the movie looked too old. Fuck you, executives. And then Disney, just whatever the fuck they've been doing for the past 15 years, it worked for Cinderella. And unfortunately, they just kept doing it after that. Yeah. See, that's one of those remakes where it's like, you can make the complaint that the Disney remakes are shit, and most of them are. I can't believe that people would call The Lion King live action. That shit's all CGI, baby. And The Jungle Book was fun, but the original far superior. But Cinderella at least gave you something more, you know? It gave you character, it gave you depth. It's pretty, it has a pretty location, a pretty cast, and pretty costuming, you know? It's a pretty fucking appropriate adaptation. But then you get, obviously, I'd make the complaint of the latest Snow White, but that would just be the CGI dwarves and the witch. Sorry, the queen. Queen? Witch? Is she a witch in that one as well? I don't know. It's hard to determine. It doesn't matter. At the same time, we can still make the complaints that some of them are bad or greedy, whatever, but we're still paying to see them, or we're just not. Assuming the whole zeitgeist is accurate, that Disney are stepping back from making live-action adaptations until Lilo and Stitch comes out and makes $2 billion at the box office, and everyone's just like, oh, maybe they can be good. And then Disney's like, yeah, we're going to keep making more. Fuck you. Because as long as they keep getting money, they don't care. And unfortunately, that's their platform right now. Money. So anyway, that's my thoughts on remakes. I don't think that they're all bad. I think that they can make an interesting adjustment for history, allowing for new people to take on older narratives with new fresh eyes, a new fresh voice. But it also allows audiences to, whether they like the remake or not, examine the original property, examine the history of the original property, and just get something more out of it, you know? Not everyone's going to be doing that. Not everyone's going to be like, I want to watch more versions of the exact same film that I just watched. But maybe they will. I do sometimes, you know? I'll watch a film that's a remake and then watch the original version, or vice versa, and be like, yeah, I can see what the differences are like. I definitely prefer that one with its vision over this one, but I liked elements of this and I liked elements of that, but I disliked elements of this and I disliked elements of that. Unless it's The Thing. I just love the original. The new one's just only has Mary Elizabeth Winstead. It's like the only redeeming factor of that whole fucking movie. So, yeah. No, I think that's it. I don't know. I just think it's a debate of open-mindedness, you know. I, as someone who loves looking back in history and in film, having a remake come out can allow me to incentivize me to examine the original property, you know? And it's like, yeah, it helps with something like Salem's Lot, where I already had it on Blu-ray, so I could just chuck it on and I didn't have to stress about any of the streaming platforms or whatever the fuck. But at the same time, it can highlight, a remake can highlight a completely obscure or really bad film that, you know, no one talks about or no one thinks about, you know? It puts a spotlight onto something that hasn't had a spotlight on it for decades, maybe. Or like a year or two, if you're, again, America remaking Speak No Evil twice. Even though I've heard both of them are good, so it's like, again, if you can make it twice, fuck it, Funny Games. The same guy did that within a 10-year period. Isn't that crazy? Haneke did the exact same film twice. I still haven't seen the original. I've seen the remake, because I have the Blu-ray, but I do plan to get the original someday in the future. Nevertheless, I want to watch the original, even though I've seen the remake. I don't think there's any differences, outside of just language and cast, but yeah, it'll be interesting. Nevertheless, thanks for watching. Let me know what your favourite or least favourite, or both, for remakes is, and we'll see you kids later. Adios. Thanks again to the Public Domain Shop for supporting this video. Don't forget to check the description and the comments down below for a link to their website, and use code word CREATIONS in the checkout coupon section for 10% off your order. Thanks for the support, and thanks for watching. See ya.